Mufi, how are you?
Hi, Miguel.
Hi, Claire, how are you?
Good, thanks. And you?
Great to be
I,
here.
I must be honest, I'm secretly thrilled that you're here so I can test my headset. I have been having such problems with it. So we can just do like a technical check-in before we kick off.
Pre-testing, that's wonderful. It happens to me all the time also. Something with the computer, I have to reboot and things like that. It's horrible. But
Yeah,
I'm glad that it's working then.
you have no idea. I'm like, it's because it always happens when when you can least afford it. Like you're juggling too
Exactly,
many
it
things.
happens
Oh.
just at that moment.
Yes, and I'm always in awe of some of my colleagues. Amanda's one of them. Their ability to multitask technical things as well as have a coherent conversation. I don't know how they achieve it.
Yeah, there are sometimes, yeah, I have also colleagues that are able to use the mobile phone and talk each other, but they are listening to me for some reason.
I just, yeah, as I say, I'm in awe. I don't know how they achieve it. Hi, Katie.
Hi. I took your fancy background for
I'm
today.
thrilled to see it. It looks amazing.
Thanks.
Nice. Have you met Miguel before?
I don't think so. Nice to meet you.
Yeah, I don't think so. Hi, nice to meet you, Katie. How are you?
I'm great. Yeah. Where are you based, Miguel?
I'm based in Brasilia, the capital of
Oh,
Brazil.
yeah.
Yes.
Great. Nice. Beautiful.
Very dry at the moment.
Okay.
Brazil is so dry right now that it's drier than the Sahara Desert.
Oh,
Wow. Oh,
really?
no.
Yes. We have 4 months with no rain whatsoever. Then we have 8 months of rain.
Okay.
We are towards the end of that dry season,
Hmm.
and it's impossible. Humidifiers everywhere, and it's hard to breathe.
Wow.
Basically.
Oh.
Hi, Amanda. Hi, Luisa.
Hi,
Have
everyone.
already 14
Welcome.
people. That's great. Rosalia here also. Oscar. Wonderful. Yes. So should we give another 5 minutes and then we start?
Yeah, I think so. We'll go ahead and just wait another few minutes. And I know we've got Katie starting us off as our first speaker, but I'll go ahead and introduce everybody and get everybody oriented.
Okay.
And I'm here with Laurie, and we will be presenting on behalf of PLH. Faith wasn't able to make it, so just so that you know.
Great. Thank you, Oscar. Good to know.
I was going to say, Miguel, I went to, you may be familiar with this. There's this course that they do, I think every year at Harvard School of Public Health for Brazilian policymakers. And I went as a guest speaker a few months ago. It was really amazing to see some of the people who were there and all the creative thinking that they were bringing. Very cool.
Amanda, do
Yeah,
you
I
know
think
if
you
the
probably
test
met someone from Rio Grande do Sul,
Uh-huh.
or from the Early Childhood Network there. Did you meet someone from the state of Rio Grande do Sul? Because it's
There
interesting.
was a
Rio Grande
lot
do
of
Sul.
people there, and I only
Oh,
did
okay.
one lecture, but so I didn't memorize them all. But yeah, I think it was Bernard Van Leer sponsored and
Uh-huh,
another
uh-huh.
Brazilian organization. Anyways, it was fascinating.
Yeah, I'm just saying that because Rio Grande do Sul had that flooding, and we are working with them now on emergency readiness for engagement of men in caregiving. So also, especially for early childhood development.
Okay.
So I think it will be very exciting also to feedback on that experience into the Harvard University course. I think will be
Yeah.
interesting.
Sorry to interrupt. Amanda, are you able to
Sure.
see my WhatsApp?
Yes, I am.
Yes, I am.
I'm just gonna play really quick and make sure that you can see the audio.
Today's pose is called a body scan.
Yep, we can hear the audio.
Perfect. Great. Thank you. Sorry, didn't see the option from Zoom to share my WhatsApp, so I wanted to make sure that the desktop share worked. Thank you, Amanda.
No problem. And I see people are starting to come in. Feel free to introduce yourself in the chat if you haven't already. I saw that Claire kicked us off. I see a couple names in the chat where people might want to rename themselves as well. I see a couple duplicates. So go ahead and rename yourself if you need to, introduce yourself. Thanks, Catherine. Thanks, Miguel. I'm really excited to see everybody start to come online and join. And we'll go ahead and kick off in just a few minutes. And one thing we're really trying to do with the town halls as we go forward is to make them interactive and really feel like a community and not just a conversation. And so throughout this meeting, we'll be trialing different polls and different questions for everyone so that it feels more interactive and you can share more of your thoughts. So as we kick off and as people continue to join, I'm going to launch the first poll question. And all of our poll questions today have to do with parenting in crisis, which is our theme for this month. So we'll go ahead and launch our first poll. Go ahead and answer once you see it come up on your screen. And if you can't use the poll for whatever reason, then feel free to also put your answer or thoughts in the chat. Okay, we've got about 20 people who have answered. I'm seeing most people are saying at times. About 50% of our respondents are saying parents and caregivers are adequately supported at times. About another third are saying not supported at all. Not at all is creeping up a little bit. We've had a couple people say yes. Okay, so as I mentioned, I'm going to give you a couple more seconds to answer before we get started with our first speakers today. But as I mentioned, we'll have a couple more quiz questions and polls throughout. So feel free to save some of your thoughts for the end when we'll have a little bit of time to reflect. And also, if you have any suggestions for polls in the future, we would love to hear those as well. So feel free to put your thoughts in the chat. So as you can see, we had about 50% saying parents and caregivers are supported at times, about 40% saying not at all, and about 8% saying yes. Okay, great. So I'm going to go ahead and kick off with what we can expect at today's town hall. So we'll start off with a few upcoming events within the next month. And then since I mentioned that the theme for this month is parenting in crisis and supporting parents during crisis, we'll have an introduction from Katie Murphy at IRC. Parenting for Lifelong Health has also recently launched a new chatbot tool and a rapid response toolkit, and Oscar and Lori from PLH will be sharing a little bit about that, as well as a quick demonstration. And then we'll have a really exciting panel discussion on men's engagement during times of crisis, facilitated by our colleague Miguel Fontes at Promundo, with 3 different panelists talking about fatherhood and men's engagement in different crisis contexts. Then we'll also have one of our ECDAN Knowledge Fellows who did a project on parenting support in Bangladesh share some of his research, and then we'll also have some time to share at the end. So we've got a packed agenda today. I'm really excited, and I hope everyone else is too. So first of all, we have some upcoming events and news. This is roughly for the next month, but if you have anything else, any events that might not be on our radar that you might know about or might want to share, feel free to add those in the chat or contact us as well, because we'd love to hear about them. Some of you might remember our African regional convening from June of 2022. The regional team has put together a compendium of parenting interventions in Africa, which will be launching next week on the 4th of September. We'll also be at UNGA 2024, and if you are too, we'd love to hear from you. We'll be facilitating a conversation on business for parenting support and making the business case for parenting support. We've also got a newsletter coming out soon. We're continuing with our Common Elements study project, and we'll have more information for you on that at the next town hall in September. And the theme for that will be storytelling and parenting. And just another resource for those of you who might be interested, since the theme is parenting in crisis, ECTAN has also updated their ECD Knowledge Gateway on humanitarian settings and has new resources available on the website there. So without any further ado, and this is more information on the launch of the compendium. We'll also share this information over email afterwards. I would like to introduce our first speaker, who is Katie Murphy, who is the Director for Early Childhood Development and Strategic Initiatives at IRC, the International Rescue Committee. And please go ahead and feel free to share, Katie.
Great. Thank you so much. And it's really wonderful to be here with you all. Great to see some old friends and colleagues on the call and some new faces and names. This is such a critical issue. So it's something that we at the International Rescue Committee have been working on. And I know our partners across the various different organizations who are represented in this call are also working very hard to ensure that those who are living in crisis and conflict settings have the support to raise children, to reach their full potential, and to achieve the health and well-being that they all seek. Next slide, please. Just quickly on IRC, for those, actually one back at, for those who may not be familiar, we're nearly 100 years old. We were founded at the request of Albert Einstein in the midst of World War II. And our mission is to help people whose lives and livelihoods are shattered by conflict and disaster, including climate crisis, to survive, recover, and gain control of their future. Next slide, please. We now work in over 40 countries, and unfortunately, the need that initiated the launch of IRC has not gone away. Now more than ever, the needs are even more critical. There are 120 million refugees and displaced people around the world, more than 43 million of whom are children. We know at a time when nativism is on the rise around the world, nearly 2 million children today were born as refugees. And the vast majority of these refugees are living in middle income or low income countries, 75%, and 20% living in the least developed countries. So countries that already have very strained systems in terms of health, social support, and other services are then asked or taking on the burden of this additional population. And just 3 countries host 52% of the refugees. Next slide, please. And when we look at the trends, we see that the number of people has increased more than 4-fold between 2014 and 2023. And at the same time, the funding gap has only increased at the same rate or at a similar rate. And so today we see more than 32 billion unfunded needs in terms of supporting what has been identified as the needs for displaced and refugee populations. Next country. Sorry, next slide. I was looking at your comment, Shikufe. We could do a poll, a quiz on that. So what does this feel like for caregivers who are in the migration and living in the midst of crisis and conflict? You can imagine the caregiver and the child in a boat, and the ocean and the sea around them is the context, the environment, and those may include a lot of protective factors and resources for strength, but it also can include threats. So you can see the shark is one way that we sometimes represent the disruptors, and the shark can be the shock itself that may be caused by climate crisis, by health outbreaks, by fragility, and leading to then displacement, violence, conflict, fragility, all these other disruptors that create the waves and the currents in the water that affect the trajectory of the child and the caregiver. So we think of how we can sort of strengthen the the resources that surround the caregiver, strengthen the boat itself, strengthen the wind behind the caregiver's back so that we can ensure that their trajectory goes in a positive direction for positive outcomes, both for the child and caregiver, and ensuring that the child has agency and participation in that journey. Next slide, please. And more specifically, the risks for caregivers and children in crisis and conflict settings, particularly for young children when the brain is at its most vulnerable stage, where brain development is highly influenced by the environment and the experiences that the child has with their surrounding. So prenatal and infant exposure to extreme maternal stress can influence long-term stress regulation and the health of the children. We also see that maternal depressive symptoms are associated with reduced weight and infant health, particularly in low-income and minority women, and that also postpartum depression is associated with long-term risk of behavioral problems and psychiatric disorders. I think the slide was cut off, but of course, a major risk that we think of as well are the protection risks. So increased likelihood for children to be exposed to violence, exploitation, separation, and other protection concerns. Next slide. So the IRC, and this has been led by our amazing child protection team, has developed a caregiving and adversity framework, which is intended to provide guidance and support for practitioners, policymakers, and others who are working in crisis and conflict settings to support action to address these critical needs. Next slide. The basic theory of change really points back to that metaphor of the boat. So how do we strengthen the conditions for positive caregiving? And ensure that those environments are supportive of caregiving, which then enables caregivers to better fulfill their care responsibilities to prevent and respond to harm against children so that children and caregiver well-being and agency are enhanced. And this is not just for present generations, but also for the future. Next slide. The caregiving and adversity framework, we can share the link, but it provides some really practical tools, and it's divided into kind of core areas. The first is around providing support directly to children and caregivers, thinking through the programmatic approach and the sample actions. So, for example, how to identify, promote, and reinforce existing positive social norms, enhance family strengthening initiatives. Next slide. There's a core section on co-designing interventions, and this is actively with children, caregivers, and local organizations, and then working through cross-sectoral partnerships. And then the third piece is around system strengthening. So understanding what are those existing systems, avoiding as much as possible, even in crisis and conflict settings, creating parallel systems, but rather enhancing those existing systems and aim to prevent and respond and build resilience within those systems to respond to violence, abuse, exploitation, and neglect. And then strengthen the systems that promote family-like alternatives for care for children without parental care. Next slide, please. And one quick spotlight of a program that's very near and dear to my heart and many of us on this call, but the Ahlan Simsim initiative, which is a partnership with Sesame Workshop and our research partners, NYU Global Ties for Children, along with over 100 local partners and ministries across 4 different countries, Iraq, Jordan, Lebanon, and Syria. This was initially launched with funding from the MacArthur Foundation, but also supported by the Lego Foundation as well. Was an enormous success. We reached over 3 million children through direct services, over 24 million through mass media, television, through the Ahlan Simsim television program. But this is a visual that provides an example of how we reach caregivers and sometimes caregivers together with children across a range of dosages and modalities. So it's not only your typical group-based, curriculum-based parenting program, but also creating online communities for information spaces. Sometimes we have one-time information sessions. We have specific modules that are focused on how to respond to and prepare for emergencies. And sometimes those are together with children, ECD or early learning kits that caregivers are supported with, as well as home visiting programs and parenting support groups. We also have, and Alana's, thank you for highlighting the report you can see in the link. Encourage you all to take a look at it. It has some great nuggets and insights from 6 years of implementation of this amazing project. 3 key randomized controlled trials were led by NYU Global Ties. The first was focused on mass media, finding that the Ahlan Simpson television show had significant impacts on children's social emotional skills, which is really exciting to see. The second was on our remote early learning program, which is very relevant for our caregiver discussion. It showed that caregivers could be active agents in their children's learning. And through just 11 weeks of remote programming where the caregivers were directly supporting their child's learning, and importantly, this was independent of the caregiver's education level. So whether caregivers were highly educated or less educated, they were able to achieve impacts in terms of children's development and early learning on par with 1 year of quality in-person preschool, which was really exciting to see and has implications for future adaptations. And the third study, which also was highly interesting, was an adaptation of our Reach Up and Learn program. Because of COVID, it was conducted remotely via telephone calls and integrated with health services and health messaging. We did not find that this initiative had significant impacts on child development, which was, of course, disappointing, although perhaps not surprising since the dosage was low and that really critical hands-on modeling approach that is so essential to the Reach Up and Learn model, of course, was missing. It did find significant impacts and reduction of maternal depressive symptoms. So that also provides a lot of insight and inspiration for what could be achieved for supporting caregivers in crisis through remote modalities. Next slide. And I'll close with this quote that I'll let you read from Ahmed. But this just echoes what we find around the world, whether we're in Venezuela, in Burkina Faso, in Chad, in Syria. The list unfortunately goes on, but in all of these crisis and conflict settings, caregivers around the world have as their first and foremost priority the well-being, safety, long-term education of their children. And this is what motivates them often to leave. It's what motivates them to make decisions around their future, and supporting them and ensuring that they have the resources and skills and the supports that they need to protect and provide a safe and healthy life for their child is a huge concern for all of us, and something that I'm really glad that the GIST community is taking seriously and promoting today in this town hall. So thank you, and I will leave it there. Thank you.
Thank you
I'm
so
not
much,
in
Katie,
control
for
of the slides, Shikufe, so I'm not sure if they worked for you, but yes. Thank you.
thank you so much, Katie, for that wonderful scene setting. Next, we're going to have Oscar and Lori from Parenting for Lifelong Health share a little bit about our new tool. But before that, we've got another quiz question. So I'm going to go ahead and launch this. And the question here is, what type of crisis support is most lacking for parents and caregivers in your setting? And if you do have any questions for Katie, feel free to put them in the chat, or we will hopefully have a bit of time at the end for a longer discussion. We'll just give a couple more seconds. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and end the poll. And as we can see here, I'm sharing the results, and you can see about a quarter of all respondents said safe spaces, another quarter said play hubs. We also had about 15% for home visiting programs and group-based sessions, and then also family resource centers and digital programs were also highlighted. So we will also be sharing the information from these polls afterwards if you're interested. And again, we've got more coming later in the town hall, so keep an eye out for those between the different sections. But right now I'm going to go ahead and hand over to Oscar, who is the Director of Programs for Parenting for Lifelong Health, and Lori Markle, who is also working with Parenting for Lifelong Health. And they have an exciting tool that that's just launched that they're going to share about along with the toolkit. So I will go ahead and stop sharing my screen and hand over to Oscar and Lori.
Thank you very much, Amanda. I think that's really helpful. Colleagues, good afternoon, good morning from wherever you are. My name is Oscar Kadenge, and I'm here with Laurie Markel, who's our Chief of Solutions. We are from Parenting for Lifelong Health, a global charity based out of Oxford. We facilitate the design, delivery, and scale-up of evidence-based, freely available parenting solutions with the aim of promoting healthy child development and well-being, and also preventing violence within the family. So next slide. So in our crisis response work, we have 3 key objectives. First is adapting and testing evidence-based parenting programs for crisis contexts. We seek to understand how we can provide effective support at scale for families in climate hazards, conflict, and epidemic outbreaks. The next is crisis preparedness, where we create systems and strategies to respond effectively to the challenges faced by parents and children during humanitarian crisis worldwide. And we've worked with quite a number of our partners who are on this call in this regard. And then the third is deployment of playful parenting resources, which essentially speaks about improving access to and the use of resources that promote playful parenting with the aim of benefiting children, particularly in crisis situations. Some of our resources, as I had mentioned earlier, I mean, not some, but all of our resources are open source. And the examples that we give here are including the 16 parenting tips that we've translated into different languages and which are available for translation again into additional languages as the need calls for it. Then we have the HOP group manuals, which basically we developed with our partners World Without Orphans. And then we have the Parenting in Crisis toolkit, which is a recent addition to the stable of open source resources that we have. And this one is basically something that you'll be reading about in the upcoming GISP newsletter. And then we also have the parenting chatbot, which Laurie will be speaking to in a short while. The parenting tips, like I mentioned, were developed with partners such as the Oxford University, GISP, WHO, UNICEF, and the UNODC, giving practical support for parents in crisis situations. They're intended for population-level dissemination and tailored to local contexts and distributed widely through different modes, such as leaflets, using radio, social media, as well as in local discussion groups. As at 2020, when this was looked at during the COVID period, we had over 200 million people who are reached with these particular resources. And the number keeps growing even as we look at the current crisis. The Parenting in Crisis Toolkit, basically, you can see it on the right-hand side, is intended to provide guidance for researchers, implementers, and others who seek to develop interventions that support parents and caregivers during crisis. It's open source and it's available online. We've given a link there which can be pasted in the chat, and it provides information. Information on emergencies and the different types of preparedness, implementation principles, launching of a response, developing resources for different contexts, and dissemination strategies within it. The next one, if you could go to the next slide, I don't know if you'll be able to move. Yes, it's the parenting chatbot for crisis support. And I want to invite Laurie. We will not go through it here. I would want us to just have a practical demonstration of this, and therefore I'll hand over to Laurie to take us through this for the next couple of minutes.
Sure. Thanks, Oscar. So in the beginning of his presentation, Oscar shared those 16 parenting tips that were co-developed by a lot of stakeholders in this community. And last year, with the support of ECDAN and the Africa 5 Nations Project, we were able to develop a parenting in crisis chatbot that can be quickly deployed in less than 15 days using those 16 tips. So the idea here is that using those 16 parenting tips, parents and caregivers can access all of that information through a easy to distribute or disseminate resource and over WhatsApp or common messaging applications. We co-designed the user experience with 15 parents who had previously experienced crisis representing Ukraine, Rwanda, Philippines, South Sudan, and the DRC. And just quickly, I'm gonna, hopefully you guys can still see. Are you still seeing? Oh no, it says screen sharing is now paused. Hold on. I think I have to re-share in order for you to be able to see my WhatsApp, because one of the things that we find is that oftentimes it's hard to explain to people what a chatbot really is or what it looks or feels like. So I thought I would just show you. So this is a PLH hosted channel, although where we envision the chatbot being deployed, it can really be delivered through any partner hosted channels. And it's relatively affordable too, especially if you can find a UNICEF partner, country partner willing to host for you, because they have a meta partnership that allows these messages to be sent free of charges. But essentially what happens is a parent comes into the chatbot, they're given a link which automatically sends a trigger word. They then get to select whatever language they want. Again, this can all be very quickly translated. In this instance, I'm going to select English. And they start receiving a set of messages. Welcome to Parent Text. Every parent everywhere needs support. We hope we can help. The tips you'll receive in this program have been developed by UNICEF, UNHCR, and the Global Initiative to Support Parents. And you can see here a set of consent information, which can be customized depending on your local rules or regulations. We confirm that the user is over 18. That's based on our data privacy standards, but can again be adjusted. We ask the caregiver whether they're a male or female, and that varies the type of content both that they can receive, so we can adapt who receives what, but also the voice of any videos that they receive, whether or not it's a male or female voice. And then they receive a video on how to actually use Parent Text. So I'm going to start playing this, but I won't play the whole thing just in the interest of everyone's time.
Welcome. This may be a difficult time for you and your family. We hope we can help, even just a little. The tips you receive here are designed with support from the World Health Organization, UNICEF, UNHCR, and experts in the parenting research community. Before you receive the tips, I want to explain how Parent Text works. Together we will review what to expect, how to find playful activities to do with your child, and how to find additional support and information. You will receive a new tip every day to help you support your children in a time of crisis. These tips are made to be short but helpful. It takes less than 5 minutes to read the daily tips. If you want to review any of the tips you've previously...
So I'm going to stop here, but you get a sense that this video essentially walks the caregiver through the chatbot and how it works and what to expect throughout their user journey. Parents then get to receive how they want to receive the content, whether they want to receive it with videos or audio files or just as text and images, depending on the reliability of their network and affordability of their data. In the current structure, we've decided to deliver all 10 tips. We've condensed those 16 tips into 10 specific tips, but We can add, edit, expand, or contract that list depending on the crisis at hand. So the first thing that we teach parents and caregivers to do is learn how to take a pause. And this is actually something that was specifically requested by the parents that we co-designed with. Every single day begins with a moment for taking a pause. And there's a lot of these different types
Today's
of videos.
pause is called breath and body awareness. Close your eyes if you like, or maintain a soft gaze. Start by taking a deep breath. Notice how you are feeling emotionally. Notice how your body feels. Continue to take deep breaths.
So these videos are delivered again at the start of every daily interaction. Thank you for taking a moment to pause with us. It's time for today's lesson. Today's tip is about caring for yourself. In tough times like these, it's normal to feel overwhelmed. Remember, it's important to take a small moment for yourself, no matter how small. Taking care of yourself helps you be there for your children during tough times. Here are 4 tips on how to take care of yourself. And then it walks the caregivers through 4 different ways to care for themselves. Connecting with loved ones as often as you can, by someone you can talk to about how you are feeling. And this same sort of set of tips, so this sort of, user experience, today you're receiving it sort of as a set of 4 tips, but tomorrow it might be illustrated with a comic or a illustrated story. So it changes day to day based on sort of the easiest way to communicate the messages or tips that need to be shared. Thanks for joining us today. Remember, you're doing the best that you can. Be proud. There are 9 more tips. You'll receive a new one tomorrow. And then parents at the end of every daily interaction are given the option to either continue with another tip tomorrow and be done for today, or to receive an activity that they want to do with their child so that they can connect with them. All of these activities have been designed to be delivered without any supplies or materials, and can be tailored or adapted to both the cultural and situational context in which you are interacting. And so here's an example of a playful activity, and then that would be the end of my daily interaction. The next day, I would continue with another tip, and I would receive a notification to my device that a new tip is ready. The idea behind this crisis chatbot is that essentially, as soon as a crisis breaks out, we can both on the front end of a crisis be prepared by having it already adapted. And then on the back end, quickly deploy it in under 15 days and make it available through mass media channels to parents and caregivers to be able to quickly distribute information and resources. The chatbot itself is also designed with a set of safeguarding tools and resources, and to help parents and caregivers respond and access additional tools or information that's available in their communities. So as those resources become available, we can in real time be updating those tools and those local resources without having to redeploy the chatbot or anything complicated. We can kind of make it this living, breathing thing so that as the crisis evolves, so too do the resources that are available within it. Like I mentioned, it's relatively quick to deploy, and we're in the process now of adapting it with the Hope Group team for Palestinian caregivers, and also are working closely with World Vision to hopefully soon adapt this in Syria and Afghanistan. So look forward to sharing those resources with the team when they become available. And if you have local partners who are able to help support the scale up of these resources in those communities, would be most grateful. Back to you, Amanda. Well, I guess first off, Oscar, did I forget anything? Is there anything I left off?
No, you did a good job. And anyone who would like to access these tips, you can actually go to the Parenting for Lifelong Health website, and you'll be directed to where you can actually access this. But for this one, I think, Lori, you needed to just put in the WhatsApp number so anyone on this call can actually try out and get to see how it works. Thank you again, Amanda and the team, for giving us this opportunity.
Thank you, Oscar and Lori, for walking us through the new resources and the chatbot. That was great to see. I see there's a lot of interest and excitement in the chat, and also some good discussion going on. So if you're not looking at the chat, you might want to be monitoring it, and that's for everyone who is interested in participating in the discussion. Next up, we have a panel, but before we do that, we have another quiz question, but we'll make this one quick because I am very excited for this panel. What topics would be important to share with parents and caregivers? Tick all that apply. Just going to give it another couple seconds and then I'll show the results. Okay, so we've got some good answers here. There's a lot of agreements with all of these. Pretty high agreement with all of these options. Number one is caregivers' own mental health, very closely followed by supporting children through crises. But as we can see, all of these have a high selection rate, which really shows the importance of covering all different sectors and approaching parenting in crisis from different entry points so that parents do get all the support that they need. And now, without further ado, I'm going to hand over to Miguel Fontes from Promundo, who will be moderating our panel on parenting in crisis. We have three speakers today: Humberto Baltar from Brazil, who is a speaker, ESG and DEI consultant, and professor of Black paternities. We have Rosella Albertini, who's a gender program specialist currently working with UNICEF in Mozambique. And we also have Roxana Hussein Parvin, who's the Regional Education Advisor for the Asia Pacific region for Plan International. And all of our speakers today are going to be talking about engaging men and fathers in different crisis settings. So I will go ahead and hand over to Miguel.
Thanks, Amanda. Thank you so much. Oscar and Laurie, thank you so much. I learned a lot today, and I'm going to go seek for those tools immediately after the seminar. In Brazil, we used to say 10 years ago that we don't have a refugee crisis and we never have had environment crisis. And now it's all coming together because we have the Venezuelan crisis, we have the Syria crisis, a lot of refugees coming to Brazil. We in Rio Grande do Sul have the worst floodings ever in Brazil. So all of this is so much needed. Thank you so much. Katie, thank you for the context you provided. Was very important. And that last picture of Ahmad was really touching because that's exactly what we're going to be talking about in this panel. It's men engagement in times of crisis in early childhood development. And here we have three wonderful speakers. Humberto will start presenting. Just to remind all the speakers that we have, for the sake of time, 5-6 minutes. We sent some questions beforehand to the speakers so they can discuss about it. Humberto will be talking about parenting crisis in the context of urban violence. We're also going to have the presentation of Hushana, who will be talking about men engagement related to refugee crisis. And we'll have my good friend Rosélia from Mozambique, who will be talking and discussing some topics on men engagement in times of environmental crisis. So it's very exciting. I think this could be a full-blown seminar for 2 days. Too bad that we don't have much time, but I think it's a start. It's a kickoff for something that will be much brought up in the future. So Humberto, I will just get to you on your presentation because we definitely don't have much time, but we are eager to listen from you and your experience in Brazil and especially in Rio de Janeiro. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Wow, it's great to be here. Thank you so much, Miguel, for having me here. Here in Brazil, we have lots of areas which are dominated by different drug groups, and these conflicts affect mostly the fatherhood and masculinity. Because when we think about what a loving father looks like, we think about presence, we think about care, we think about nurturing, a playful father. But if you are in an endangered area isolated by the crime, you cannot display affection in public because if you do so, you are seen as weak, you are seen as fragile, and this makes you more vulnerable to different kinds of attacks. So it is really hard to be this loving father when you live in an area like this. So to give you some context, I would like to give my personal example here. In my very street, my side neighbor where I live was shot in the head by a stray bullet. So this happened in my streets. And here's the news I'm sharing with you about what happened. And I cannot play with my son here in the neighborhood, for example, because how can I do this if we run the risk of being shot, you know? So we have to move to remote areas so that I can take him to a square or a playground area. And many parents don't have financial resources to do this. So it's really hard to be this loving and caregiving father in an area like this. So we founded this initiative called Pais Pretos Presentes, which is the group that I run with my wife, which in English translates to um, present black parents. And in this community, we try to discuss our hardship and our difficult conditions we have here in Brazil. So we see that by sharing with other parents and other fathers who live in similar areas, we can strengthen our bonds and connections with our children. So our vision in Pais Pretos is what we call umoja. It's an African principle which means togetherness. So we should be together with other parents, other fathers who are facing the same scenario. Our mission is Ubuntu, which means embracing our challenges as a group, as a community. So my challenge is similar to another Black father challenge because those areas which are endangered are usually mostly present by Black men. Yeah, we are majority in those areas. We call this environmental racism, which is another topic. And we have also the value, the principal value in our community is sankofa, which means basically looking back to what our ancestor values and principles so that we can feel protagonists in our realities because I see that the discussion of masculinities and fatherhood in Brazil is usually dominated by European principles, North American values, which often don't connect to those black men realities. So we try to go back and look to African ancestry and our origin. So we have this strategic approach of looking back. We foster and try to stimulate a transparent communication, making these men feel comfortable to talk about their uneasiness, their fears, and their uncertainties. We have this ancestral look to our heritage because in Brazil, most black men have no idea about how rich and powerful is their origin, their African origins. And we try to do this men group circles of discussion groups regularly on a regular basis. Every month we have a face-to-face meeting, and every 2 weeks we have an online meeting as well. And we try to, as what previously mentioned, which was perfect, try to have a cross-sectoral partnership. For example, last year we have a partnership with UNICEF program called Anti-Racist First Early Childhood, which was amazing because we could empower different men with strategy on how to empower their black kids. And also we work with other institutions like early childhood network we have here in Brazil. We work with the ministry, health ministry also. So we try to make those connections with institutions so that we can empower those fathers and those families. And also multi-educational approach. This is essential because we need popular education because unfortunately in Brazil, parental education is extremely expensive. It's around $1,000 a course of parenting education. So families don't know how to approach an autistic kid, for example, or a Down syndrome kid, how to use positive discipline in their education. This is an elite topic in our reality. So we try to stimulate this multidisciplinary approach in our groups as well. So we try to foster those information about non-violent communication, positive discipline in a way that those people can access such information. And also to finish, multiliteracy. This is another topic that is essential, especially after the pandemic. A few people have digital literacy. They have no idea, for example, how algorithms work in the social media. And this is very bad because most parents have no babysitter or assistant or caregivers to help them. And they usually leave their kids with a mobile phone in their hands. So this is extremely harmful for those kids, not only for thinking about screen time, but also for the dangers we have concerning child abuse in the social media. So we try to provide literal, digital literacy, ancestral literacy as well, thinking about their African connections. We talk about racial literacy because many important Black people in Brazilian history are not mentioned in our school education. So we have a lot of work to do in this mission. So I invite you all to join hands with us. We have our contact information here, and this document will be sharing with you the link so that we can keep together because, as I said before, the togetherness is key so that we can solve our challenges. Thank you so much for having me. Feel free to ask anything or share your thoughts.
Humberto, your work is just amazing. You know that I'm a big fan, and it's really interesting because we are working also with indigenous populations, as you know, in Brazil, to see if we can avoid them to have direct contact with urban violence in the sense of this Eurocentric culture that damages completely their community knowledge and their, their ways of caring for their communities. So we are working with the YMPs, as you know, and we're trying to document their experience on fatherhoods, for example, so they solidify and consolidate those knowledges, not to change, please, to preserve the knowledge, because if you go to a urban setting, you're going to lose that knowledge in what is to be a man and violence and so on. And what you do, it's just amazing in bringing up the whole knowledge, the local community knowledge that is so needed in these communities for good parenting, especially in times of crisis. So thank you so much. Probably you're going to go back for some of the questions that you already sent it to you, but let me pass on because of the sake of time I'm very excited to listen to this presentation from Rushana Parvin, who will be talking about her experience in parenting crisis with refugee populations in Bangladesh. Shana, it's a pleasure to have you here.
Thank you so much, Miguel. Claire, are you sharing my slides or Amanda?
I'll share them, Rushana, but I'm just trying to screen share right now. So go ahead and let me know when you
Okay. So actually from Plan International, I would like to thank Global Initiative for Supportive Parents and ACDAN for inviting Plan. It's really a pleasure being here. Actually, you know that in Plan International, the strategic priority is becoming one of the leading organization working for girls facing crisis and disaster, and also respond quickly and effectively to any emergencies. So today I'll briefly share one of the field experiences that we have done in Myanmar on male engagement and how it's actually building resilient homes, families, and communities. Next. Okay, so before moving to that, I would like to share very briefly that in Plan International, under the Early Childhood Development Program, we have 4 core components, and parenting is the foundational core component for both in development and humanitarian program. And that we also work with, these 4 components actually work integrated and holistic way, and also we work with different stakeholders from different levels of communities. Next. And one thing is, when we say a foundational component, that we actually expect that all the programs will implement a parenting program. For example, like when we say early learning, we know that like in the camp setting or in the home, like play-based interactive learning is very important. So we develop the capacity and the knowledge and the skills of parents how to interact with their children, and especially in the camp setting. So here, when we say actually what should men's engagement actually look like, I mean, the way we work with the communities and in the crisis, that we expect that the males in the family and communities, they have engaged, they are taking active role in protecting well-being, health, and development of their children and partners. They are emotionally involved and responsive to their children. In addition, they share responsibilities in childcare, support their partner in homes decision-making, and also promote a healthy, respectful, non-violent, caring, and equivalent couple relationship. Next. So if we say very quickly, like in a nutshell, that what are the strategies we apply? So we actually go for mutual learning sessions. We do dialogue, we do group education approaches, we do home visits to reach men directly in order to enable them and support their engagement. And we do critical reflection. We do skill building and the gender norms and regulations. We also work with community members and engage them to support, like in community dialogue and reflection. We work on policy advocacy and strengthening laws, policies, regulations, and that actually facilitate men's engagement. And we also develop we promote effective social and behavioral change communication strategies, and we do in all the programs. Next. Okay, so very briefly, how do we ensure that the factors are in place? So we have many tools like male engagement guidance, and we have tools. We have toolkit. We have we do also group discussion. We visit the camps, and we see that and we also collect evidences to identify that whether gender norms are challenged or not. So through our different many tools, we ensure that. Next. Okay, so actually, what we do, when the key message is, we feel that when men engagement work is done, that provides a crucial entry point for challenging gender inequality and building resilient. And we do that creating an environment at work from individual to societal level. And we also, work with family members and influencing policies. Next. Okay, so now I'm going to share with you a model, an innovative model that Plan International worked and have been, replicated in other country offices. Next. So in the Myanmar, you know that the situation we have, it's like the stress in the family. There are no early childhood education opportunities, and we also found that a lack of positive parenting practices, and there are other barriers that actually hamper the early childhood development. So next. We call this program Parenting Under Pressure. So what we do, we actually work with the parents and caregivers of children like aged 0 to 8 years in humanitarian crisis and crisis situations. We do like peer-to-peer parenting program that aims to empower parents, caregivers to provide nurturing care that supports their children's healthy development and well-being. We have a strong focus on parental well-being, promoting co-parenting and means engagement, and strengthening support and solidarity network between crisis-effective parents. And this model has been implemented in multiple contexts, like Myanmar, it's already innovated, and we also Burkina Faso, Rwanda, Uganda, and Mali. That countries actually adopted this program. Next. So what is actually the model? It's a hybrid model. There are in total 17 sessions, and originate plus 17 face-to-face sessions, and then also we have audio lessons that in the curriculum that fathers, they are introduced to the gender responsive parenting intervention. In the face-to-face meeting, the facilitated session, and then the audio session that's like highly entertaining. It's relevant to their context, and also it's in local language. And at the end of the face-to-face session and also the audio session, we have some discussion points that often fathers even listen, with rest of the family, and they also invite discussion and the reflection. So these 17 sessions and the audio content we found very effective. And if we see that so here actually fathers are listening the audio. Next, please. And this is, I think, our last slide. So what we have seen in the after this parenting under pressure program implementation, we found that in both models, like face-to-face and hybrid models, that there improved parents' knowledge and practices, and it showed like longer term engagement with programs content and had greater success in reaching fathers. It also enhanced attitude towards gender equality and adopting fairer approach to parenting regardless of their children's sex. It's also like increased the benefits, like we see, like the research, we have done research, we saw that it's increased from 7% to 33%. And we also see that when the contents also have like stress management techniques like mindfulness, this kind of activity, that actually increased positive behaviors among the male parents. Thank you. That's from my side.
Shan, thank you so much. Very interesting. I also am eager to see the ideas that you brought up. I think social mobilization, self-reflection groups are so important in this context. And, your approach is very interesting, and I think it can be replicated to many settings with the specific adaptation of language and so on. So thank you so much. Very interesting. I'll pass on to our last speaker in this panel, Rosélia Albertini. And Rosélia is a little bit in a hot spot here, because talk about parenting crisis in times of global climate change. I'm sure it's a brand new effect that we are thinking about it. And I think Rosélia will bring us more of reflections of what happened in Mozambique during the floodings. We are also having that same trend here in Brazil with a lot of the consequences of the global climate change and how to adjust to the new normal of global climate change. So I'm very pleased that Rosélia from UNICEF Mozambique was able to come over and to speak us briefly about what she has been thinking in Mozambique, what she has been seeing in Mozambique, and what the plans are, some of the plans for UNICEF, not to leave, as in her own words, not to leave men behind in caregiving in early childhood development. So I'm really pleased to have Rosélia today with us. Rosélia, please go ahead.
Thank you so much, Miguel. And I have to say, I am extremely stoked to be here today and sharing the experience that we are having in Mozambique. I hope I will not be the one that actually interrupts this row of successful technological presentations. So I hope you can hear and see very clearly. I will talk about, hidden roles. So what happens to parenting during climate-related crisis, based on my experience in Mozambique and maybe with some hints from previous experiences in other countries. And I think, it's not just what I'm going to say, but maybe what I'm going to show, because as you rightly said, it's what do we see, And I really love using pictures when I organize my thoughts. And I was going through the immense database that we have here in UNICEF Mozambique. And I was like, okay, so this is not just my perception. What is happening to parenting during crisis in Mozambique is really reflected in the whole pictures that we can see in our database. And I think, this first one starts giving you a hint of where the story goes. It's a kind of a spoiler picture, probably. I think, we are all talking from countries where there are traditional patterns when it comes to gender roles in households and how they influence parenting. And what we see in Mozambique, and I think it's our standard sentence when we talk about gender dynamics in our reports and proposals, is like, traditional unbalanced gender roles are exacerbated by the crisis. But then what concretely does that mean for men and women and for mother and fathers in Mozambique? It means that, there are some usual suspects, which we all are seeing here on our screen. And what is their experience during the crisis? And this crisis, we are struggling to call them emergencies because it's not something that is unexpectedly arriving from out of nowhere. It's something that is now cyclical, it's seasonal. And we are surprised when it comes not so strong. So like last year, we didn't have any cyclones and it was, wow, surprise. But then it's like becoming part of the normal. So it means that the routine, the lives and the dynamics of these people, they are being constantly disrupted. So it means it's becoming part of their lives that in a certain moment of the year, the dynamics are changing and the roles are shifting. And then what does that mean in the medium to long term for us? We are working in a context where, it's already a challenge to be a parent everywhere, I think, but then they're facing a context where structurally they are fighting against malnutrition. We're talking about more than 30% of kids that are affected by malnutrition. Diarrhea is the everyday normal. Communicable diseases, we have, now in Mozambique, at this moment, as of today, we are cholera, polio, mpox, measles, you name it. Pregnancies at risk with skyrocket levels of maternal mortality, and learning outcomes, which are already extremely fragile. So the question for us is, what happens during crisis? These half or maybe 1/4 of the year that is dedicated to disruption, what does it mean for us? And it means that what are the structural issues are suddenly exacerbated. If I start from a point where it's really so far to reach health facilities and other services, then during those 3 to 4 months per year, I know that roads will be disrupted, health facilities will not be working, schools will be used as a temporary shelter. So we know that this is happening regularly. When I start from a point that we know that quality of healthcare provision is not optimal, And that is really a problem for ECD, so for early childhood development. And then I know that health workers, for 1/4 of the year, they're probably going to be affected by the disaster themselves. And there will be problems in, taking supplies to those areas that are regularly affected by the crisis. What happens when it comes to awareness of parents on early childhood development, hygiene, childcare? And then it's really hard to grant sustainability. But then for that period, all those activities stop. So it's like, I know that during those months from December, January up to March, April, that will stop. And then household resources, we are talking about more than 70% of households that are under threshold of poverty. And so in addition to that, cherry on the cake, they have loss in household revenues. And in addition, they have the little resources that they barely have, they have to dedicate it to the reconstruction. So suddenly education, health, nutrition, they come next in the priority. And finally, in terms of mobility, where it's crucial, where we don't move with a car, families don't have cars, bike, motorbikes. And then they suddenly cannot even move anymore because of insecurity and because of the disruption of all of the services. Even police, they cannot literally be doing their job. So the question is, when the storm hit the ground, this is the situation. So it's not just when Idai hit, it's every year. This is the situation somewhere in Mozambique. And this is what I was saying, the visual reply to what happens to parenting. If you go through all of the images, I mean, it's not that we are biased when we take the picture, because all of the sources, they are capturing exactly the same story. So it's mothers that are left alone with the family, with the children, and they become temporarily sole childcare. And so, as you were rightly saying, men are left behind, in a sense that men are left behind repairing the house or looking for temporary revenues, emergency revenues, because they need to survive, or they are trying to reconstruct their places. So for a certain period, women, mothers, become the sole child carer. And what does that mean? In a context where we saw already services are disrupted, activities and support, they are limited. What happens to these women where even their family becomes fragmented, And where are the men? What does their absence in this context mean? Imagine, you're losing everything. You lost your house, you lost everything you had. And in addition to that, your family split. So children and female care provider, they are in temporary shelters, and then men, they are somewhere else. And that's where we have a situation where, once again, very deeply embedded gender imbalanced role become exacerbated. So the role of the breadwinner is what takes over for men. So their unique role becomes reconstructing, gaining something with which I can rebuild my home. I can rebuild my agricultural production in the Bachamba. And then the burden on women becomes huge because they still have the same burden as they had before, but with all of the challenges. So it's like run a marathon, but with a series of obstacles that you have to jump over in order to arrive to the end. And the problem is that they become, if really they need to and they want to ensure those roles, they are more exposed to gender-based violence, both in the shelters and outside. They don't know, they don't get the information because they are mostly literate or with very low access to information. So they don't even get the information about where the distributions are, what aid is arriving, what opportunities there are for their children. And they are the ones that are struggling getting to the facilities for the nutrition visits, for immunization, even for registration. We are in a country where you cannot register a child if the father is not there. So what does that mean? Because if you don't register immediately, trust me, it will be really hard to catch up later. So it means loss of opportunity for mothers, but also struggle for children in keeping up, in having a decent first 1,000 days for the kids that are in very low age, but also for children, for instance, in primary school, and for adolescents that are more exposed to violence or to other forms of negative coping strategies. So we see that this disruption, it's not just about the role of father and mothers, it's not just about male versus female caregiver, it's really how the indicators or the well-being of children becomes and risks to become jeopardized by these natural events. So when it comes to what are we doing, we're doing a lot, but I want to be really honest, I am not sure that there is an answer yet, because we are doing a lot on small scale and pilots, and we are really trying to combine programs and approaches that joined together can make sense and can give something that is more sustainable. So I would say on one side, we have a series of structural interventions that are needed. The first one being engaging services in being more gender responsive. And when we say gender responsive, it's not just because we want to use buzzword, but it's because we know that services themselves, they only talk to mothers. So they only encourage mother, and they behave, they work as if there was no father. To the extent, for instance, that when father go to the maternities, they are left outside. If they try to participate to antenatal visits, they are left waiting outside. So they go once and they will never go back again. So working with services and changing how they work and how they perceive the role of parents will be crucial. But then also engaging local leadership, because one man or one service provider will not change perception on the role of men and male caregivers, because I will not deviate from what's the norm in my community, because I will feel judged. So we need to move the way people perceive that men can behave, that men can take on the role of fathers beyond being the breadwinner, mobilizing them on
1 minute left, okay? Just
Yeah,
1
sorry.
minute left, okay? No problem.
Mobilizing them on this positive version of masculinity, including a little bit more proactive role in terms of parenting. So it doesn't mean that you have to stop providing for the family. It means that you can start changing your view on how you share, how you split responsibilities. And then in emergency, we have a series of interventions that could be creating change in the long run if adopted. But I think, and I will close with that, we are in a context where we need to think for the moment in terms of low touch, low connectivity, low literacy. So we have these constraints in terms of keep it simple and especially keep it for everyone. And I will stop there.
Thank you so much, Jose. I'm really sorry about the time, but I think the message is very strong here. And Amanda, I hope you will be able to get access to all the presentations because this is fascinating.
Absolutely,
And I just want to end up here because of the sake of time again, unfortunately, to thank you, Amanda, Claire, Luisa, for doing this great event for us and the Global Initiative to support parents and also EquiDem. Thank you so much. So Amanda, I pass on to you.
Thank you, Miguel. I know we'd had some questions planned that we might not have enough time to get to. Maybe if there's a little bit of time at the end, we can circle back around to some of those. And I wanted to say as well, because I don't know that I made this pitch before I introduced Miguel and our speakers, that we do have our Fatherhood and Male Engagement Learning Group, which happens quarterly. And we have presentations like these with speakers coming in, talking about their experiences in working country, and also great discussions between the members of the learning group on the context that they're seeing and how to work to support men and fathers in these contexts. So really, I hope that this is just the start of this conversation or a continuation of this conversation and not the end of it, because I think there is so much to discuss and delve into. And yeah, hopefully we can get back to some of those questions at the end if we've got a little bit of time. I am going to just quickly launch our next poll question. And we've got the next one here. And this one is on age groups that need support for parents, that parents and caregivers need support with. So we'll just give another couple minutes. And I see a question in the chat as well. How can we join the quarterly conversations? If you're interested in joining that group, I will put email address in the chat and we can include you in that mailing list. We'd be very happy to open to anyone who wants to join. So feel free to contact us there and we can add you to that distribution list. Another couple seconds and then I'll close the poll and show the results.
Do they have like their
Okay, so we can see that the top answer is 12 to 18 years, but there's also a pretty close competition of 1 to 5 years. I think what we're seeing here is that it's a pretty easy, even spread, and that parents really need support across the life course for their children. Okay, great. So I wanted to thank again all of our speakers on the panel, Miguel, for coordinating and for moderating that. And I wanted to go ahead and introduce our last speaker, and then we'll have a bit of time for discussion at the end. And our last speaker is one of our ECTIAN Knowledge Fellows. And he completed a project as part of the ECTIAN Knowledge Fellow program on parent support in Bangladesh. And this is SM Rashid Jaman, and he's a humanitarian professional with over 6 years of experience in improving educational outcomes for vulnerable populations, including the Rohingya community. So I will go ahead and turn over to Rashid to go ahead and share a bit about the knowledge project that he developed with the ECTIAN Knowledge Fellows program.
Thanks, Amanda. Hello, everyone. Good evening from Bangladesh. I am Isam Rashidujaman, and I'm currently working with IRC Bangladesh as a technical manager for early childhood development program. Today, I will be sharing some brief insights from my study that I have conducted under the ECD Action Network Knowledge Fellowship Program. Cohort 3. So this study explores the obstacles and the opportunities faced by the parents in facilitating their children's development within the Rohingya camps in Cox's Bazar in Bangladesh. So in the study, I had a great mentor, Tina Haider. I wish she could be here today. Yeah, next slide, Amanda, please. Yeah, so the core objectives of the study were to understand the unique challenges faced by parents in the Rohingya camps and to identify some of the actionable solutions that can enhance support system for both parents and children during humanitarian crisis. We try to aim to answer some of the critical questions, critical study questions here, such as what specific challenges do parents face in the Rohingya camps? How can these challenges be addressed to enhance the support systems, and how these insights inform future advocacy efforts? Next slide, please. So, going before to the main findings, I want to provide you some brief context of Rohingya camps in Bangladesh. I know every one of you are aware of this context. So as the Rohingyas, they this August 2025, this is the the 7th year of the Rohingya influx in Bangladesh. So more than a million Rohingya population lives in the very remote hilly camp locations. among them, 52%, more than 52% now is the children, and there are lots of problems and challenges faced by the parents, as the living conditions is very harsh and adverse. The livelihood opportunities are very poor. Children are suffering from malnutritions. There are a lot of things going on here, and obviously the lack of adequate learning opportunities for the young children also impacts the parenting practices in the camp locations. Next slide, please. Yeah, so to gather this insight, I conducted interviews with 8 national and international experts in early childhood development and parenting. Additionally, I reviewed some of the reports, study reports, publications, and abstract on the similar topics. Try to understand the context, and unfortunately, due to time and ethical constraint, I was not able to interview parents directly, but the professionals' perspective provided a very strong foundation to understand the challenges and potential solutions. So I used KI tools to interview the experts. Next slide, please. So the key findings, these are the key findings from my brief study, but there are a lot more thing going on in the parenting practices in Rohingya context. So I wanted to highlight some of the key findings here. As you know, the parenting, the living situation is impacting in the camps for the Rohingya people, especially the climate change related issues and other things. But apart from that, parents also struggles with some of the other things, like decision making about their future and the future of their children, and they don't know what is going to be within the next 3 to 5 years. They don't have a clear picture of their future, so this uncertain situation is creating more challenge to care for their children, especially for the younger ones. And the reduction of the funding affects the nutrition and the overall well-being of the Rohingya context. The gradual funding cuts, especially from the food assistance part, is creating nutritional impact for the young children as well. The lack of recreational activities for the parents and children also impacts these practices. Families, they are also kind of struggling with adapting with the new culture and social environment, because the camps are very near to the host communities, and some in some camp locations they over the host communities also overlaps with the camps. So this situation creates some issues for the Rohingya population that also impacts for the child development and parenting practices. These kind of things also impacts the parents' mental health as well. So parents also shows some psychological distress symptoms like anger, neglect, and loss of hopes, sort of things. Distress signs. Children also have their own distress signs and behavioral issues. Especially for the male personnel, fathers, as they don't have any income generating activities opportunity outside the camp areas, and they are not allowed to go outside the camp areas. they exhibit more severe symptoms of distress, especially anger and neglect to their families. They most of the time they seems to stay outside of home. That also impacts the child's development practices, the parenting practices for the parents. And also, the socio-economic constraints, as I said, they have no win situation here. They don't they are not allowed to go outside the camps. They are not allowed to have any livelihood opportunities. They don't have any jobs. There are lack of education for the parents, and they are struggling with food assistance and their daily life. These are the key issues that are faced by the parents in the practitioner's point of view. Next slide, please. So
And just sorry to interrupt, but just to say as well, since we are running short on time, it would be great if you could kind of speed through on
sure.
some of them. Great, thank you.
Sure. Yeah. So I will keep it short. From the practitioner's point of view, some of the solutions that we have come up with, like they emphasized on the integrated support system for the children and parents, some evidence-based programming that includes different programs: health, nutrition, protection, educations, all sectors working together for the parents to support their children development. A whole family approach, parent engagement, those sort of things are really important in this context. Also, the key issues here as for the child development and parenting is the funding source. So advocating for increased funding and resources is very important for that. So these are some of my findings from my study with the Knowledge Fellow program with EGDAN. So there are more interesting reports and study done by other fellows of mine. You can find it in the EGDAN website as well. Thank you so much. Over, Amanda.
Thank you so much, Rashid. And thank you so much to all of our speakers. I know we're running very short on time. I wish we had, another 90 minutes to go into all of these issues even more and to have a wider discussion. I did want to just give an opportunity for a moment to open up to our community that's online right now to see if anybody wanted to come in with any questions for any of our speakers, anything that you wanted to share about your work, any thoughts you have on parenting in crisis as a priority. Just going to open it up to the field. Feel free to just put up your hand for the next minute or so, or to just come off mute and share. And if everybody's feeling quiet, then maybe we have time for like one question as a lightning round with Miguel from our panelists earlier. We always plan more discussion questions and then run out of time. So if there's no one who wants to come in, maybe Miguel, I'll hand it over to you to just kind of see if our panelists have anything else they'd like to add.
Go ahead, Claire. No, it's fine. No, it's fine, Amanda. I think the idea of this meeting was really to bring up the issue to another level. And I think, just bringing crisis, not homogeneously, and understanding crisis as something that has a specific contexts of crisis. One is urban violence, another one it's refugees, another one is climate change. I think you bring us the whole notion of how complex this issue also is. So I think this discussion was very helpful in the sense of bringing us a lot of the ideas, but also some of the solutions. The one that I feel that will be imminent in the future, hearing the presenters, will be the climate crisis. It's definitely a new normal. And we'll have to deal with that on the parenting crisis because we are seeing this in Rio Grande do Sul, we are seeing in Brazil in the Northeast, we are seeing also in Mexico, here in Latin America, just to say Latin America. So I think it's really an opportunity for us to think over, the whole notion of parenting that is already difficult in times of no crisis. Can you imagine being in time of crisis? So I think because of the lack of time that we have, will be impossible to have more in-depth discussions. But I think sharing those tools and sharing with us the presentations will already be a great source for us to think how we apply this knowledge and these tools locally. So I think basically in the name of all the speakers in the panel, I want to thank really for the opportunity. And I think please follow up with us on the working group on fatherhoods. If you need the link to get into our discussion list, please do so. We will continue these discussions on the list and also in our future events. So thank you so much again, Amanda, Claire, Luisa. This was a great event.
Thank you, Miguel. Beautifully said, as always. I don't know that I could have said it any better. So thank you for giving us those great concluding thoughts. Definitely, this is a conversation that we can continue in our Fatherhood and Male Engagement Working Group. And also, I think to continue in general, I think this is a very important topic, one that's of big interest to the community. And as Miguel said, will unfortunately become increasingly important as climate crisis becomes more and more widespread. I wanted to thank everyone in the community for joining us today. I'll share the presentations, notes, all links from the chat in an email afterwards, and make sure you sign up for our mailing list so that you can hear about our next town hall in September, which will be focusing on storytelling. So thank you to everyone and see you at the next one. Thank you.
Thank you so much, everybody. Bom dia. Ciao.
Boa tarde, tchau.
Thank you. Bye-bye.